Good job, guys. Good. Great one. Okay. Chloe, Kevin. Why is Chloe's paper completely filled out, but Kevin's isn't?
I was just getting a little confused with what we were supposed to be doing.
Okay. Well, Chloe, can you please help Kevin get caught up with the material? Like, I know we're supposed to be working together as groups, and I really appreciate if you guys work together. You have strengths, and so does Kevin. I think you guys really benefit from each other. Can you do that for me?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Great job, guys. Great job.
Thanks.
Hi guys, we're Sink or Swim, preparing students for collaboration in small groups. Presented to you by Eric Ave, Kevin Diggins, and Chloe Spang. So we want to talk about group work today and how group work has a tremendous impact on how students grow and learn, not just in elementary, but also through to middle school, high school, and on to college, and really for the rest of their lives. I mean, group work increases their abilities to problem solve, reason, and to work with each other, also improving soft skills. Just from my experience, and I'm sure a lot of other teachers, some problems that may arise with trying to implement group work for the first time include, but are not exclusive to, groups working in mixed abilities. High students ending up doing all the work, low students, kind of drifting on by, not having to put much effort, and thus not really learning much. All right, so now on to the fun stuff. We're here to provide you guys with teaching practices that are proven to be effective in the classroom. Really excited. First recommendation, teaching students to have targeted and small group discussions. Second recommendation, implementing cooperative learning to promote student higher order thinking. We'll move on to the third recommendation, to teach students to self-regulate in groups with metacognitive questioning. Metacognitive really just meaning thinking about thinking. How do we encourage students to think about their own thinking? And the fourth and final recommendation is giving remedial feedback to students throughout their group work. So let's get right into it.
So our first recommendation is going to be to implement training in academic helping strategies for our students. These strategies are built upon a strong foundation of class building activities and communication skills, so it's essential to implement these helping strategies in addition to building classroom community and helping students be better communicators. One great way to build classroom community is to start the year with name games such as, "Hi, my name is blank," in which the class goes around in a circle and each person introduces themselves and everyone else who has gone before them till the teacher goes last and introduces everyone. Another great activity is paired interviews, in which students pair up and ask a number of questions about each other and then share some of the most important or interesting facts with the class. Now, once you have that foundation of classroom community and a structure built there, then you can start having conversations that build small group activities and communication skills. So this can be done by making anchor charts that specify good practices such as attentive listening, being respectful of everyone's contribution in the group, using inside voices, and making sure that everyone has a chance to participate. It's also useful to introduce students to the idea of self-reflection by having them assess themselves on how well they were working in their groups. And you can also try to do things like build group identity by having them come up with group names or signs for their teams. But the main focus of this recommendation is going to be the final step of this process, which is training students in academic helping strategies. There are lots of teachers already who are trying to get these classroom community building activities and communication skills in there, but our study really focused on helping strategies. So the ultimate objective of these is for students to recognize that all of their group members have a unique point of view that may provide valuable insight into any assignment or activity, and then give them the necessary tools to effectively share and learn about these viewpoints. So one great way to start this process is with a draw what I say activity. in which students are paired off and one student describes a complex shape while the other student tries to draw the shape. And you can do this in two scenarios. In one scenario, the drawing student cannot ask any clarifying questions, and in the other, they can. So what you get is students who are able to ask questions where there is that two-way communication. You're able to get a lot better results. Whereas when there's no communication, where it's just one person trying to explain this picture that they're seeing, the communication breaks down and they aren't able to work effectively as a team. So you want to make sure everyone is communicating and participating in a small group structure. And once you have that established, it's useful to discuss productive helping strategies with students and then record those key pieces on an anchor chart, similar to what we did with communication skills. And the nice thing about anchor charts is that you can post it in the classroom, have the kids have a part in making it, and then reference it throughout the school year. So we have an example on the slide that shows some suggestions for both seeking and providing help in a small group or classroom setting. And on the left, we can see when someone needs help, there are some strategies that they can have, such as identifying someone who they can ask for help, making sure to phrase your questions in a clear and concise way, and then making sure that by the time you're done talking with that person, you're ending with a clear idea of what you want to do. And then on the right side, we have structure for students who are in the place of giving help. So they make sure that they're understanding what the question is, that they're asking specific questions to understand where the student is coming from, that they're asking the student to show their work and be very clear about demonstrating what their question is, and then giving very specific feedback to that work. And then once we have that, it's worthwhile to continue the process that we started back in communication skills of having students reflect on their helping skills and talking about what went well and how they want to improve as they go forward as a group. So there are many different options for students and for teaching them these academic helping strategies. And we've discussed just a few here, but it's definitely worthwhile to explore more options and then try to adapt these to your classroom so that you can use them throughout the whole school year and make students feel really comfortable sharing their thoughts and working together as an effective team.
And now we are on to our second recommendation, which is to use metacognitive prompts for group work. Here is an example task card that you can give groups for metacognitive prompts. They'll start with a comprehension question, such as rephrase the problem in your own words. Then they'll go to a question on strategies, such as before solving the problem, think about how the different problem-solving strategies we've used in class. Using one or many of these strategies, outline the steps you could take to solve this problem. And finally, they'll do a connection problem. What problems have you done that are similar to this one? Why are we encouraging metacognitive prompts? Well, first, requiring student elaboration during problem solving promotes reasoning and justification skills. Secondly, providing a procedure for problem solving will help students to move forward on a problem when they get stuck. And finally, prompting students to build connections between current and prior tasks may help them store the information in their long-term memory. Don't just take our word for it. We're going to present the research paper, Enhancing Mathematical Reasoning in the Classroom, the Effects of Cooperative Learning and Metacognitive Training. In this study, they took 12 8th grade classrooms chosen randomly from a school district in Israel. A total of 384 students were participants. All of the schools were similar in size and socioeconomic status, and none of the schools used groupings or ability tracking in the classroom. All teachers had more than 5 years of experience and attended a 2-day in-service training program. The study took place during a 2-week unit on linear graphing. Each classroom used one of the following 4 instructional methods. 1. Metacognition prompts in small groups. 2. Metacognition prompts individually. 3. Small groups without metacognition prompts. Or 4. Individual work without metacognition prompts. The researchers hypothesized that number 1, metacognition prompts in small groups would lead to the highest final test scores. Within these treatment options, the groups were structured in heterogeneous groups of 4, in which they had one low-level student, one high-level student, and 2 middle-level math students. These levels were determined based on the unit pretest. In addition, the lesson was structured with a 5-minute warm-up, 10 minutes of direct teach of new materials, 30 minutes of seat work, either as a group or individual, and 5-minute whole class review. Here is a comparison of the pretest and post-test means for each treatment group. Take a moment to look at the data yourself. Notice that the condition of small groups with metacognition prompts had the most improvement of all the groups. Also, notice that the difference between the group and individual treatments that did not have metacognition prompts was not statistically significant. This shows us that having students work in groups does not improve their learning unless a thought-out structure is in place to guide their collaboration. The treatment of small group work using metacognition tasks also had the highest frequency of using logical formal arguments on their unit test. They had the longest justifications, which incorporated more math terminology, and they had the highest scores for flexibility, which is the ability to provide more than one strategy to reach the solution. The evidence definitely supports using metacognition prompts in small group work. So now, what do teachers need to know? The first step of implementation is expressing the purpose of the metacognition prompts. We suggest you say, asking and answering the metacognition questions will help you understand and remember the material presented in mathematics class. Next, it is very important to model the metacognitive process. We suggest using a think aloud format and to use the prompts while presenting new material or solving example problems. Next, you will need to print out your metacognitive prompts on handheld cards. It's very important for teachers to select meaningful tasks. These are tasks that can be solved using multiple strategies or models, contain relevant context, and require multiple steps to solve. Here's an example of a meaningful task. 2 express trains with no stops left the central station on parallel tracks. Train A went 60 kilometers per hour and train B went 90 kilometers per hour. Train B left the station 1 hour later than train A and reached the last station 1 hour earlier than train A. What is the distance between the central and the last stations? Finally, teachers need to implement a rotation procedure during group work. First, the leading student reads the task aloud to the group. Second, the leading student reads the comprehension prompt and attempts to answer it. Other students in the group may now offer feedback on this answer. For steps 3 through 4, the leading student again reads the prompt for strategy and then for connection. Finally, every student in the group works through the problem. Students help each other and ask questions, and they compare their answers. If a consensus is reached, the group begins a new task and the leader role rotates. If not, they get help from the teacher. We also suggest that when you first implement the rotation procedure, that you use low-level tasks that are accessible to all students, perhaps a review task. We also suggest choosing the first leader of the group to be a student who follows directions well and can be a model for the rest of the group.
Okay, so recommendation 3 is to implement cooperative learning within heterogeneous groups, meaning groups of different skill levels. Now, cooperative learning promotes students to explain their own reasoning. So they have to draw from each other. They have to draw from their teammates, and they have to access prior knowledge. So what do I know? What do I already know? What can I infer? What can I ask? So this is where the metacognitive questions come into play, thinking about thinking. The first recommendation here, the first step that we can implement this is to start off the year and give a pretest. Start of the year pretest, see where everybody is so that you can categorize students into low, mid, or high. Then separate into heterogeneous groups of 4, where 1 student is low achieving, 2 students are middle, and 1 student is high. If you only are going to do a group of 3, then it's appropriate to just have 1 low, 1 mid, and 1 high. The second thing is to structure the class to facilitate cooperative learning. So here we're going to get into think louds. So For example, a teacher could begin the lesson with a 10-minute presentation on new stuff. And in that presentation, teachers can use Think Alouds to ask questions about students' own thinking, so metacognitive questioning. We can check that answer and what to do if that strategy that students come up with does not work. Next, small groups can work together through task cards or things of such sort for 15 to 20 minutes. At the end of that lesson, we want to review the main ideas that students discussed in their small groups. And teachers should use around 10 minutes for this review to provide any other explanations to address difficulties that the groups encountered. Now, the third thing is to meet with each group at least once a week. So during small group time, it'd be effective to have teachers to join a team for around 10 minutes and act as an additional member. So go straight into the group and continue modeling the metacognitive process, continue asking students questions about what they're doing and why that may be effective or may not be effective. The important thing here is that the students come up with their own reasoning, thus the metacognitive questioning. Okay, so the fourth and final recommendation is to implement a feedback corrective enrichment cycle. This is basically to check where students are progressing and remedy any misconceptions that they have. Now, our research has shown that this feedback corrective enrichment cycle has been effective when formative assessments have been implemented every 10 lessons. Now, the reason that we want to put students into homogeneous groups here is so that they can this allows students that are demonstrating mastery to receive additional enrichment activities so that they can further their knowledge and mastery, while other students can also receive corrective practice. So separating the realms for what each particular skill group needs. Now, the cycle begins by delivering a formative assessment of with questions that particularly focus on main ideas from the unit, as well as higher level mathematic problems. And the second part of this cycle is to create the homogeneous groups. So first, students need to get around 80% of questions correctly on the formative assessment to be considered a master, to be on the master group. The other students require more practice and then thus are grouped together. The third step is to provide corrective and enrichment activities for each of these groups. So the students who have attained higher level of mastery are going to build off of those main ideas, while the groups that are not are going to be given corrective tasks to correct their misunderstandings and prove that in step level number 4, where they're permitted to take one retake of the formative assessment and be able to prove their progress and growth. Now, that cycle can start again within the same unit or not, depending on whether you choose to do so. So a couple of roadblocks that one might have are to consider that, we talked about heterogeneous groups being effective last slide. How come all of a sudden now we're also talking about homogeneous groups? So the research in the last slide did show that homogeneous groups alone are not effective, but within this scope of research, in the feedback corrective enrichment cycle, homogeneous groups are effective. So both types of groups can be effective. It just depends on what your goals are and how you choose to implement the group work. Either way, though, they're both good practices.
Thank you guys so much for watching our whole presentation. We have some discussion questions up here for you to think about, and we hope to see you guys at our Q&A session where we can talk these through. Thank you.